Hello and good morning, feeders. Today is January 9th, 2022, and my name is DJ. Joining me today, as always, we have the lovely Feeder Finance Patrick. Pat, if you'd like to say hello to our users at home.
Hi, guys.
Hey. So, we heard your feedback. We fixed the audio a bit. Hopefully it's right on par for you guys. So, starting with the TLDR as usual, we have the roadmap. The team is still working on the roadmap to align with the development that is sprinting away. The boys in the lab keep making strides in progress, and Pat barely has time to keep up with them. So, we're preparing infographics to accompany the article for maximum impact, and it shouldn't be too long now. What do you estimate, Pat? Probably another week or so?
I would say, no more than that
Okay.
at most.
Hopefully we'll be talking about it next week for you guys. So, the new staking page. The new staking page has been released with much more to come. Additional information throughout the platform to clarify which products are ready for a fee reduction and more. And the percentage of feed staked has definitely increased, so I think it's working. Feeder Finance Lending has officially finished its audit with Pegshield. You can check out the details of that in the weekly update. Over 40 vaults have been stealth launched over the past week. Be sure to check those out on FTM. We're now at 100 FTM vaults. The portfolio upgrade. We're always constantly upgrading it, adding new stuff to it, and you can check out some of those new updates here and now. And a couple minor updates as well. You can check those out in the changelog. So, the roadmap release. Something everyone's been talking about, and probably largely what's been driving a lot of the token price lately. What ambitious goals do you have, Pat? What do you have to share with the community now? Is there anything that you can leak to us or share with us? I'm sure there's tons of viewers at home that are chomping at the bit for even a morsel of information.
Um, I can structurally, I can, talk about what will be included. I'll
Sure.
keep the details, for the roadmap, so it's you guys can get excited about
Absolutely.
that. So we'll definitely, talk about how we're going to Feeder Finance has a lot of different in our ecosystem, a lot of different pieces. And the first piece that we did was, obviously the bolts. So there's going to be a big update there, and some of which you've already probably guessed with, some of the teasers about our chain expansion. You'll find out more about how far we're going to go and how fast we're going to go with our vaults from chains expansions and the amount of vaults we're going to be launching. You can probably guess because we've been launching so many vaults over the last 2 or 3 weeks. We virtually completed FTM within 2 weeks. We're only a couple of vaults away from completing FTM and already testing the newer vault. So that's one piece we'll talk about in the roadmap and outline for you where we're heading. And then we'll definitely talk about the lending, which is probably the highlight of perhaps the first half of 2022. We're going to go deep into the details of what the lending will look like, how it's working mechanically, the use cases of it, and providing with some infographics to make it clearer and more visual to make sure you understand. So we're going over that, and then a couple of other things that we haven't talked about, and I'll probably keep it in the roadmap for now as a secret. But there's a lot of things brewing in the background, and we're going to be launching a lot of major and minor things. As you know, things that we've already launched constantly gets updated and improved. So we'll mention some of that, so you know what to expect. But that's generally what's coming in the roadmap, and we're spending a lot of time thinking about how to create infographics that explains things and that adds more excitement, because we try to be professional, and it's sometimes we sometimes are too professional. A lot of things that we release are quite text heavy, some people like that, some people don't, and we want to make sure everybody gets to follow Feeder and be informed in a way that they appreciate. So adding a lot of visualizations and infographics is one way of doing that to make sure you don't have to read essays and essays, which are helpful if you want to get into the details. But if you don't and just want to get a quick overview of how things work, that will help. So that's where we're spending a lot of time on. And the reason it's sort of somewhat delayed, we were hoping to get it out this week, is because I'm mostly just trying to catch up with Jimmy, because Jimmy and Raphael and Pandit, just releasing stuff left and right, and that sort of affects what gets included, because I've said we'll release this, and then the next day it's released before the roadmap and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, dude, thanks, I need to delete this. So that's why we just need to redraft things a bit. But we're close. So stay tuned for that.
Well, there you have it, folks. More on that next week. So, looks like there's been a major overhaul of the staking page. Some lovely features being added here. Different tiers of features to unlock on the Feeder Finance site, and even upgrading different tiers of fee reduction. Would you want to talk a little bit about this?
Well, it was actually always the plan to use the fee token as something that relates to the utility of the platform.
Mm-hmm.
The way it started was, the simplest thing is we from the start we had fees, which is how we, number one, sustain the development and grow the platform, but also reward people that support us, through this journey.
Mm-hmm.
So that was always there. But over our 8 months period, we've added a lot of different tools and features onto the platform, and we also want to sort of use that sort of those things to allow for people to use the fee token to access them as well. So a lot of things are free anyway. Like, you don't really need the fee token to vault, because all the vaults work
Mm-hmm.
anyhow. But if you want to have the wallet, if you want to have if you want to have the portfolio APYs shown differently in APY APR, then we spent a week working on that. Right. So a lot of these things we spend a lot of time working on, and the way the crypto economics work is you basically link the usage or the utility of platforms with the token, and you either reward people for supporting, or you basically link the people that use the platform with the token.
Right.
Instead of the way the typical economy works, where you're paying for a service. You're paying for Netflix, you're paying for Amazon Prime, stuff like that. In this case, you're paying for it, but you're not only paying for it, but you're also getting the rewards for it, as in you're getting paid for owning feed too, aside from getting all these features. So it's sort of a sharing economy in a way, where you're helping us and we're helping you, and everybody sort of wins.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the idea, and the reason we tiered it so in such a way that you start off with 1,000 S feed and then 2,000, 3,000, is because I think it's fun. I mean, not everybody. Let's say we price it in one tier for all the features at what is it, 13,000 feed S feed. Nobody's going to start off with 14,000 feet when they come into Feeder Finance the first time,
right?
Because they haven't experienced it, or they don't know if they can trust us, they can trust the platform, they haven't used it long enough.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go through the journey for a bit, like, okay, let me try 1,000 S feet and see how it goes, and okay, this works, the wallet works, and then you start using the vault, and then you start to think, okay, like these APY APR, they're useful, right? Because now I have these investments, and I sort of want to know what my returns are in APR, or I want to know what it is in APY, and if I want to unlock that, I need 2,000 speed. And then you start the second one. So it's fun, and it sort of links with because we sort of structured it by what we think the utility is of each of them. The more utility these things provide, the more Airspeed you need. That's how we price them.
Mm-hmm.
That's why like these cross-chain aggregation, historical balance, which is super helpful if you're invested on both FCM and BSC and eventually in other chains. That's super useful, and that's why you need 13,000, 14,000 SV for them. And so generally speaking, in conclusion, I guess this is just the beginning. And as we add more things, even for lending, you'll get reduced fees for owning SV too. So this is, if you're owning SV, you're owning this business, and you sort of need to you should be entitled to some perks and access and benefits, right, for using your own platform, because essentially that's what it is. You're part owner of this platform as SV holders. So yeah, that's the idea.
I think it's a really beautiful idea to turn the tiers of investing into a sort of gamified approach. That is definitely something that I believe will help users feel inclined to want to achieve these tiers. So very well done, team. Great job. So the next big ticket item here, some more meat for the meat and potatoes. Shout out to Jay Molly. The feeder finance lending protocol has finally been audited by Pegshield. It looks like, from reading the audit report myself, a lot of major and medium issues were found, but then quickly resolved by the team. So this announcement coming from Pegshield, can you talk a bit about the relationship in the past that you guys have had with Pegshield and why you have gone to them for the audit?
Yeah, I mean it's a dramatic story, because and if you've been around with us, you'll remember, right? Because we started the project, and we right off the bat we wanted the best, because we needed to create trust and security for our
And
users.
legitimacy. Yep.
And legitimacy, yeah. And at the time, the only game in town was Certic. That was 8 months ago. Pegshield wasn't a thing back then. And so we went to Certic. They audited our first two contracts, the farming and the token contracts. And then, once we're done with our vault contract, which is in this case a very complex vault, because that contract was not only a simple vault, but some other layers on top of it, which allows for these vaults to aggregate more vaults underneath it. So it was a very complex product. And we went back to Certic, and they were asking some massive amount of money that we couldn't afford. Like our dev wallet wouldn't be enough to pay for the audit. And so we need to look for alternatives, right? Because we can't release the product without an audit. So we went around, and at the time I was already sort of following Pegshield, because they were just the new guy in town, and their efforts were mostly looking at exploits and explaining how these exploits work. They were one of the first people to identify exploits, and they were following the hacker accounts, and they were reporting things. And so they were really good at what they do. And then I looked them up, found out that the founder was a chief scientist for a cybersecurity firm in China with tens of thousands of citations. So he was a PhD in these things, so he knows what he's doing. And we contacted them. We were one of their earlier clients. They were nice to us. I spoke to the founder himself. I don't think I can at this point because he's somewhat harder to reach, but a really nice guy. And we explained to them, like, okay, we went to Certic and couldn't afford it. This is what they quoted. Can you guys do better? And they actually told us that it wasn't actually outrageous because of how complex our contract was, but they can do better. And they did. And we went with them. And 8 months later, they're one of the best auditor out there. And personally, from my personal well, not experience, but from what I follow, because I keep a track record of all the exploits, but also who audited these contracts, because I want to know like who actually made a mess.
Right.
Some contracts were audited and still got exploited. And a lot of them have some really high profile names. I won't name them directly, but we spoke about them just earlier. um, but none of them had Pegshield. So they have just flawless track records, and so now they're one of the best, and we're still using them, and they're still nice to us, also in terms of pricing because we were supporting them in their early days. So we have a good relationship with them, and we trust them, and rightly so.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's been a great working relationship with them, and I know the team really appreciates their input on a lot of stuff. So great job there. With the Pegshield audit, was there anything about it that you wanted to bring up or let the community know before we move on to our next topic?
Well, I think everything is fine in terms of the result of the audit. There was, one thing that we acknowledged, and both Pegshield and the team acknowledged that somebody could basically, because we have a mechanic that allows for reduced fees.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so there is a way for someone who wants to basically bypass the fees to do it if they really, really wanted to, and they want to, and but it wouldn't have impact anything. It's more like we could lose. There could, if someone was really wanted to do it, they would be able to bypass the fees. But that's pretty much it. And we decided that it wasn't worth the time in terms of basically fixing, because that would make the contracts even more complex.
Right.
So both of us, agreed like, okay, it's not a major issue. It doesn't impact funds. So that's, if you are going through the details, that's something you might find and might have a question mark on, like, this is, you left that unfixed. And yes, we did. And because it's not something major enough to warrant more time to do.
Gotcha.
But having said that, we will be updating, and you'll find out in the roadmap as well, because the first release of the lending is not the last release. There will be some upgrades and some additional functionalities and features and major stuff coming out for lending, which will require some additional audits too and additional work on the contract. So we'll work on that then. That's basically the decision. So that's if there's a note, that's the note for you on the audit. And for the lending itself, our progress there is basically, contracts done, audited. Jamie was working a lot on the vaults and on the portfolio, because that's just, it's just one step away from being done. So we just wanted to get that done. And he's worked on the UI for the lending, but he says he's not fully satisfied with how it looks, so he wants to spend some more time on it. So that's on the development side. The only thing that's missing is a perfect UI, which we'll work on probably next week, because everything else is mostly done. And then it's about the launch process, which we spoke about. I've contacted a couple people, projects and influencers and stuff like that, and everything looks okay and looks good on that front. So stay tuned for the launch. We'll launch in a launch event, so we'll announce a date, and we'll be counting down for that event. So it's going to be super fun and exciting.
I'm excited to build some hype around it. That's going to be a good time. I always love when we do launch events. All right, so the next thing we have on the docket is 40 vaults have been released. And we can just touch on this briefly. I know you said that we're close to finishing out FTM, and so we shall be turning our eyes towards a new chain, correct? After the release of Roadmap and Lending?
Yep. And we actually have a giveaway we announced earlier for guesses. So if you haven't, just go there and pick your favorites, and let's see if you're right, and hopefully get some. If you're lucky, get some giveaways and some fun.
When are we drawing the winners for that?
When we announce the next chain, which is very soon. It's unclear. I think it's probably even possibly before the roadmap, but definitely right after roadmap because we're already testing the contract for that new chain, and so basically we will be deploying the contract. We'll be testing it. We just won't make it live on the platform. So we're basically there right now. So there's nothing to wait. It's just more about the timing of things. So whether or not we do it before or after the roadmap, but could be before too. So you might get surprised.
Well, be sure to check Deck Screener, guys. Maybe you'll find it. um, I believe that is all we have for our major updates. A few minor updates have been released. A lot of, I'd say, housekeeping and little features here and there have been added to the portfolio, the invest page, just little things here and there. It's definitely a lot cleaner, so great work, team. As we come to close, there are actually some questions I have from our lovely feeders at home. So, are you ready to go through the gauntlet?
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
Awesome. So, a set of 8 questions coming from our user, John Molly. Thank you, John, for the questions. So, question number 1. Regulation is inevitable. Will the team consider providing a means to integrate a Know Your Customer component to the platform?
We've discussed this a lot, and also with our community members in the DMs. And basically, where the industry is right now is it's very vague because every jurisdiction has different laws and regulation around this. If you focus only on the United States, there's already on-chain services that allow for KYC for people in the United States, but not for most other regions or countries. And so, if we were to go about being compliant with the US, that means a lot of things on the platform the US customers won't have access to, even if you KYC. Um, things like the exchange, the DEX. If as a US citizen, you can't access 1inch, not at this point, and our exchange uses 1inch. So technically, if we want to be compliant, we'd have to shut that down. Um, there could be an argument also against Speed being a security as well, and I mean I'm not well versed enough in all of the jurisdictions regulations and stuff like that. So my thinking there, and I think my stance there is to sort of wait and see, because I think at some point the industry will get regulated, but all these regulators everywhere they sort of need to agree on what the basics are, where the base is, like what is the minimum requirement that DeFi projects need to have that all these regulators across regions can agree on, and if that's then decided and can be on-chain implemented, there will be services that allow us to do that, and we don't really have to do the work, and we'll likely implement them. But we'd rather be, and we're not Aave, we're not Compound, and those guys will probably lead the way anyhow. So we'll just keep our eyes open for what the industry leaders are doing, and if it warrants doing, and if it needs to be done, we'll do it. So I guess that's the answer. So I don't have an answer as to yes or no, but it will depend on how things are going on the regulation side.
Awesome. Great answer. So question 2, I'm actually going to merge it with question 3 here, John. What would it take to enable a fiat crypto on/off ramp directly with the platform? And merging it with the second question, when can we have the ability to integrate credit/debit card deposits to the platform so we can buy feed directly? Pat, I believe in the past we had possibly talked about a partnership with another team maybe to be able to implement that, or would that be something that we would take on in-house?
We would definitely not take that on in-house, because that again
Is a
goes
mess.
back to it would definitely be we going to credit card, debit card. If we do it ourselves, we need to have a relationship with Visa or
Right.
MasterCard or Amex, stuff like that, which definitely no, because that's massive housekeeping and processes and documentations we have to go through.
Yeah.
But there are services that offer that because they keep that relationship and then they offer the service to projects like us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, if we want to turn that on, we can turn it on tomorrow, um, because that's how easy it is these days.
Oh,
Going back to the question, the stance we probably do first to make sure we don't break any laws is um, basically link you to these places, because you essentially can on ramp, off ramp on a lot of different places, but that will depend on where you are as well. So that's the complex issue going like the first question, which is what is the regulation where you are and which services can you use? Because even the service that Raphael uses to on ramp, I and Jimmy and I can, because it's not approved where we are, and where we are, we can't use credit cards to buy crypto either. So
right.
that rules out pretty much every services out there that allows you to on ramp, because usually you need credit cards to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if we pick one or two services to offer, it still wouldn't satisfy everybody on the platform, because not everybody can use them. So that's the complexity of the issue. So we'd rather not do it yet until there is a global standard for that, and then we'll do it.
Awesome. Great answers. So the next question here. Are there plans to consider insurance as a product or service on the platform, or at least integrate with a third-party DeFi insurance provider? Is there any value of adding insurance to the platform apart from Feeder Finance's own insurance fund?
There is definitely a plan, and we're relatively actively looking into doing that. I've contacted a couple of projects that do DeFi insurance and stuff like that, because there's at this point a couple of them, and we have communicated, and basically their feedback is you guys should get a little bit more mature, because they can't there is a limitation to how many projects they can support, and they need to be selective basically. So basically, I guess the answer is at some point we will. And my hope really is that the way the insurance industry or DeFi insurance industry work right now is pretty centralized, where the team selects which projects to support. But I don't think that's the way to do it, because you can technically do it in a decentralized way where, similarly to how we're decentralizing interest rates with lending and all of that. I could think about ways to do it in a decentralized way where you can price the interest or price the insurance, price them. I need to think about the word, but basically price them as to reflect to what the risk of these projects are. So my hope is that there will be somebody out there who will launch a project that basically decentralized the insurance industry for DeFi, where any project can be insured at the right price. So if you're a new project, you're a risky project, obviously your premiums will be a lot higher, but that means you can still get insurance. And so I think at some point, if somebody does that, we'll get it right away. But if not, then we'll just wait until we can get into the support of the bigger DeFi insurance projects right now, and then we'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely. This next question we have here is, as the platform grows, current S-feed thresholds may be unattainable for future users or investors, especially when we hit the maximum supply. Will these thresholds be reviewed as feed to S-feed ratio increases?
I actually spoke to Jimmy about that, because we priced them and I'm assuming the question basically talks about the staking page where things are priced in S-feed, right? And at some point these S-feeds are going to be really, really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we're thinking about it is we'll definitely need to reprice them at some point. So, a short answer is yes, we'll need to reprice them if it becomes too expensive, but we don't want to do it too often or too soon because it sort of defeats the purpose of basically. Um, Let me do it this way. There's actually two pieces to the staking page. The one piece is the discounts, and the other is the features unlock.
Right.
Um, I would think the discount won't change because we basically price them relative to the ownership of the platform. So in that sense, if feed prices becomes more and more expensive, it becomes harder to own more of feed, which is sort of the point of buying early. Um, you if you buy, you take greater risk buying it now, as the project is still relatively young, um, and not yet a super success number one aggregator, whatever. You're taking a greater risk, and so you should be more greatly rewarded, right? So you should be able to you should be able to accumulate more share of the fees, and so in that sense, I don't think the discount ratios will ever change. So you'll still need, uh, what is it? I don't know, 50,000 SV to get to um, tier one or something. That won't change. But what will change probably are the feature unlocks, because I don't think it's fair to ask someone to pay $10,000 something to unlock the wallet. Um, and that wouldn't be, and that gamified experience won't be fun. So as feed prices goes up, as feed becomes more expensive, we will revisit what the pricing on the feature unlock is. But for the fee discounts, that will unlikely change. So if you're hoping to get reduced fees, and if you're planning on using the vaults and using lending and using whatever else we'll launch a lot, it might make sense to start accumulating now, because if it gets more expensive later, it's going to be harder to eventually, let's say, get to zero fees, so 100% discount. That's going to be really hard. It's hard now, but it's possible. But if it gets a lot higher from here, even going to back to all-time highs, then it starts to become really ridiculously expensive to get to tier 5. So that's how we think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question. I know JSquad's a separate project, but will its holders be entitled to some exclusive benefits from the platform, or will there be a tie-in to platform benefits to a JSquad holder?
That's a harder question because I think and this is just a speculation on my part, but I think we'll likely have ways to integrate or to support the JSquad NFTs through our social angle of things.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a lot harder to integrate them with the core functionalities of our smart contracts, because that would require us to do some heavy development. And also because the JSpot projects changes over time, as William comes up with new ideas, he might launch new NFTs and stuff like that, and each NFT is unique. So that means if we want to maintain it, we'd have to continuously develop to support it. So that would be harder to do. But I think if we were to find a way to, include them in the social angle pieces of things, for instance, getting a verified profile picture if you own the NFT, then that's a lot easier to do. So stuff like that I think might make sense, but otherwise a lot harder.
Yeah, absolutely. The last question from Jay Molly is a pretty simple one. When DAO?
In terms of when DAO, I think it's going to be pretty soon. But in a sense that because of how many pieces and how many contracts our project manages, it's going to be hard to completely DAO it like the way you would DAO a lending platform, as in the typical lending pools like Aave or something, because they only have if they support 20 different tokens, and there's only 20 contracts. which is then linked to oracles and stuff like that. So it's a lot easier to DAO something like that, but we have 200 vaults and we'll have a lot more. And so if you want to just the vault piece, and if you want to completely DAO that means updating 200 plus vaults and having issues like if there is a problem with a vault, say, rapid stopping withdrawals, that means the DAO would have to vote on whether or not to allow people to withdraw funds. And we would have to coordinate the DAO with Rapid's timing, the DAO voting, and all of that rigidity of things, which is quite complex and I don't think efficient. But if there's any other things in general, like managing, anything else that is on a higher level can be DAO'd, we'll probably DAO fairly soon, because we're not at the end of our development phases, but a lot of the bigger pieces has been built. But we still haven't really thought about which pieces we should be DAOing, because I'm not even, I guess in terms of fees, that might make sense. So managing the fees, but then again, I guess stuff like fees, where things that are constant across the entire platform, might be able to be DAO'd, but I'm not sure how valuable that is to the community to be able to manage that. So yeah, it's a complex issue which requires a lot of time to discuss, and probably too long for this audio.
Most definitely, yeah, that's definitely at length. Yeah, so that brings us to the end of our questions from Jay Molly. A few questions here from Perik. If I hold Sfeed, will I be able to lend it out to other users so they can get their tier up and get better platform rates while I still own and stake my own feed?
Wait, if you're...
So essentially, if the user is to hold Sfeed and lend it out, would they be able to lend it out to other users so they can raise their tier within the platform?
Yeah, if you're lending your Sfeed out, that means the Sfeed leaves your wallet and goes to the borrower's wallet, so he will be able to reduce his fees and you wouldn't. However, let's say you're in between tiers, right? And you have excess. Let's say you're between tier 4 and tier 5, and you're not quite at tier 5, but you're far away above the tier, the tier 3. It might also make sense to lend it out, because then somebody could just jump up to tier 1 right away without having to buy a lot of feed while you keep your tier 4. Mm-hmm. So there's a game to be played there where you can actually monetize Sfeed, because Sfeed has value just because it also reduces fees. And if somebody's using the vaults a lot, borrowing Sfeed to reduce fees might actually make sense for them. It also makes sense for you because you can enhance your yields, right? Because Sfeed grows anyway, regardless of where it is and what it's doing. So if you're lending it out and the borrower sort of repays you in it, repays the Sfeed back, those Sfeeds are more valuable, but you're still earning 20+% APYs on them, so you're enhancing the returns. But yeah, going back to the question, you wouldn't be able to keep your tiers if those Sfeed leaves your wallet. That's the simple answer.
Gotcha. Next question. In the past, you guys were talking about connections that were made with Binance people, and they mentioned the platform needs to be developed first. Has there been any further updates on this, or any, continued development in that sector?
I think that was more about our conversation with Certic. So basically, gotcha. And I don't think they were happy with us shifting over to Pegshield, but basically what they were saying, and that was early on, and it might even be, a way to basically get us to pay them those higher auditing fees. But I do believe that they have connections with Binance, because they are basically Binance's auditor,
right?
As in they're the same team, more or less. But basically what they were telling us then was, you guys are, you guys know what you're doing, and you've got potential. And if you're more developed, we can connect you with finance. But that's it, right? And
Right.
so, we don't really know. Let's say we go back to the Certic guys and say, oh, guys, we're doing this and that. Can you connect us with finance? And I don't think they care, because we've been using Certic for the past 6 months. We've been using Pegshield. I mean, so so that's it.
Cool. And then the last question from Perik is, at any stage, will we include the Ethernet chain to bring in people that don't know much about DeFi? And I think I can answer that one for you. You'll just want to have to see the roadmap. Yeah, I'm sure that the roadmap will tell you a little more about what's coming in the next few months or so, and hopefully you like what we have in store. I believe that is all we have for you this week, folks, unless there's anything else you would like to add.
Nope, I think that was a long audio. We don't actually do it this long if you're joining us for the first time, but this is special. So, but do send us questions if you have any to DJ, and we'll discuss it here.
Yeah, absolutely. Be sure to hit us up in the Telegrams and Discords. Let us know your thoughts. Yeah, thank you if you've made it all the way through, and we appreciate you. That's all for us this week. Be sure to tune in next week, where Pat and I will hopefully be deep diving into the next chains / roadmap.